they'll be introducing themselves. They'll be introducing themselves a little bit later as they take on talking responsibility for various parts of the presentation. An overview of what we'll be covering over the next hour and a half. I will begin by giving a quick overview of ePADD and the ePADD Plus project. We will then move on to a demonstration of the newest release, which just came out and available this week, and talking about what our testing regime is going to be looking like. We very much want to continue to position ePADD as a community-supported product. So we'll have a section where we'll be talking about how you can get involved. We really want to know what you think, and if you want to actually contribute in various tangible ways, we really want to encourage that. So there'll be more information about that there soon. We're going to leave some time a little bit past the midway point for a Q&A, a formal Q&A session. If something does come up before that, please add something to the chat. Colleagues will be monitoring that and will answer anything urgent as it comes up. If not, we'll get to that during the QA session. And then we'll finish things up by talking a bit about a road mapping exercise and how we want to get you involved on our future plans. Just a note, today's presentation is being recorded, so it will be available up on the website for future reference, and also to accommodate those who are not unable to join us here today at this time. So to begin with, what is the ePADD Plus project? Well, it is what we are doing is trying to increase the preservability of email. Email, of course, I think it's pretty clear to all of you, is a very important cultural form of communication. So we're basically starting from the premise that is very well articulated here from the 2018 task force report that was funded by Mellon, the DPC, and CLEAR, the Council for Library and Information Resources. There are many definitions of what actually digital preservation is, what it constitutes, but I think there's pretty clear community consensus that there are four primary preservation imperatives. Those have to do with providing assurances of the archival integrity, authenticity, accessibility, and ultimate usability of materials that are placed under proactive stewardship. In terms of applying these high-level principles to email and email records, this means we need to be very much concerned with and provide technical means, as well as social means, perhaps, to support a number of functions. Certainly, the acquisition of email from the widest possible forms, in the widest variety of clients and servers. We want to make sure that we are saving the original order of those email records. There's a lot of internal technical details with regard to headers, multi-part bodies, attachments, and we want to make sure that all of those things are actually we have the opportunity to maintain all those things as they were originally created and acquired by us. Obviously, we want the fullest possible characterization and description, both intellectual as well as technical and structural and administrative. We want to have the ability to normalize to the most preservation-friendly formats, as well as potentially creating a variety of derivatives in other sorts of formats that might conform to local practice or policy. Then, of course, we need to do whatever we can to ensure the persistent protection and security of these materials Typically, that's going to mean transfer into some sort of preservation repository or some sort of proactive preservation program. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're going to be enabling the widest possible, although appropriate, discovery and delivery of the materials that might be placed under archival care. There are a variety of technical tools available for doing this. This project arose from sort of synergies that were identified between two of those tools. One is EASE, the email archiving service, which was developed here at Harvard University Library about 12 years ago now. That's been in force here. It had always been our intention to release this as an open source product, but of course, that was something that we never quite had time to do, unfortunately. ePADD, developed at Stanford, of course, has been an open source product from its inception. About 3 years ago, we started to have conversations with our Stanford colleagues to recognize that there was some significant functional overlaps between the two products. And originally, those discussions were focused on just helping to sort of align our respective development roadmaps so that we would not be having necessarily duplicative work being done. But about 3 years ago, at the beginning of the pandemic, when work suddenly became a whole lot harder and we were all making very hard decisions about how to use our resources most effectively, it seemed obvious to us that we should work towards a technical convergence of the two systems that would be essentially a best of breed and provide certainly continue to provide the function that was available in both, but also to make sure that we were going to provide the function that was available in only one or the other, which is sort of laid out here in this graphic. This type of technical convergence was one of the strong recommendations that came out of that CLEAR report. It said we definitely wanted to, as a community, wanted to work towards much closer integration and alignment of various tools over time. We're sort of taking that to its sort of a more extreme level of actually creating a single technical platform where previously there were two. So this led to the ePADD Plus project, which is intended to integrate EASE-like long-term preservation function into ePADD's existing support for appraisal, processing, discovery, and delivery. The project itself is a collaboration between Harvard, Manchester, Stanford, and Amuse Labs. And it was very graciously funded by the University of Illinois as part of their larger EABCC regrant initiative, which funded a number of very interesting and important activities in the area of email archiving. The work at Illinois itself was supported by a master grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. I want to take a brief moment here before I hand things over to my colleagues to acknowledge the really critical work of a very large, engaged, and very expert team from a variety of institutions. Here at Harvard, my colleague Tricia Patterson, who will be talking a little bit later, was one of the co-project managers for the entire project. But we also were drawing on the expertise and effort of a number of other colleagues here at the Harvard Library. University of Manchester, again, Paul Carlisle was sharing co-project manager responsibilities. And again, a number of his colleagues very much involved. And Manchester was the locus for the bulk of the actual technical development work that we'll be describing a little bit later on. Throughout this whole thing, we've had the very eager cooperation of our colleagues at Stanford, the original home of ePADD, Sally, Glenn, and Michael. And we brought on the folks at Amuse Labs, Sudhindra and Chinmay, as consultants. Amuse Labs were the original developers used by Stanford for the creation and the maintenance of ePADD over its lifespan. We felt it was very important to bring Amuse Labs into the activity to help us ensure that there is good technical continuity between what was already available and the work that we are doing. One of the things that you'll hear about in a moment is that ePADD now includes the ability to read and write a variety of email formats, whereas before ePADD was restricted to Mbox. For this purpose, we are using a third-party tool called eMalchemy, and we have the very good cooperation from Matt Hovey, the software vendor for that product. Finally, of course, both Ruby and Chris, our sponsors and program officers at Illinois, have been extremely supportive throughout the whole process. So with that, we are going to sort of switch gears a little bit here and talk about what we have done, particularly focusing on the new levels of support for long-term preservation that are now built into the ePADD tool. And to do this, I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Ian Gifford from Manchester, who will be talking about the new preservation features in ePADD. Ian?
Thank you, Stephen. So your last slide there makes me want to launch into singing Together in Electric Dreams, but I'm not going to do that, you'll be glad to hear. But yes, I'm Ian Gifford. I'm head of digital development team at the University of Manchester. Been leading the Manchester technical team working on the project. And now you've heard some of the background of the project, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about the work we've accomplished so far in terms of the new preservation features that have been added to the software. So these features correspond to three major areas within ePADD. So import, adding metadata, and export. So starting with the import features. In previous versions of ePADD, the software didn't retain certain information or formatting from the original email files that are really important for preservation purposes. So one of the major focuses of this project was to ensure that ePADD did retain and capture this information, including the complete email header information, details of message formatting, as well as multi-part messages. Users also have the option to add what we've termed sidecar files, where a sidecar file denotes any additional file regardless of format that a user would like to associate with the collection. In terms of the metadata, the new version of ePADD also captures a much richer set of metadata for a collection, so including a range of automatically generated metadata, including premise events. So that can be events like conversion, import, validation, or deduplication, and a more extensive set of fields for user-supplied metadata, and that could be things like embargo data, software and environment information, or rights statements. Unlike previous versions of ePADD, captured metadata has also now been aggregated into a single directory within ePADD, and you will hopefully be able to see this in our demo. In terms of the export features, we have also updated how ePADD exports collections to better facilitate long-term storage and preservation. This means packaging the email with the canonical version, that's the Mbox files that were imported into ePADD, the appraised or processed derivative versions, any of the user-supplied sidecar files that I mentioned earlier, and all of the automated and user-provided metadata, all in one preservation-ready bag, ready for import into the repository of your choice. So as Stephen mentioned, all these features were part of our ePADD version 9 release back in October, but since then we've been focusing on the ability to embed an email conversion tool within ePADD. So in the previous version of ePADD, conversion of email to Mbox format had to be done outside of the ePADD application. And we ran a survey last year to determine the most popular and widely used email conversion tools amongst the ePADD user base. And eMalchemy came out on top by quite a margin. So with many thanks to Matt from WeirKit Software, the creators of eMalchemy, for working with us on this. But in our new version 10 alpha that we're releasing today, on the purchase of an eMalchemy license and creation of a USB dongle via a special software application you can get from WeirKit Software, you can now convert from a number of different email formats and within the ePADD application itself, ahead of the normal import and appraisal process. And additionally, you can also now convert appraised or processed files to EML format as part of the export process. So I'm now going to hand over to Paul Carlisle, who hopefully, with the prevailing wind, will be able to demo some of these features. Paul.
Thank you very much, Ian. Yes, well, I hope the video works. So the video, we hope, will actually illustrate some of what Ian was talking about there. We've got a demonstration of how ePADD works, from installation, which Jochen and Tom will speak about in more detail later on, right through to the provision of access or a degree of access via ePADD's delivery and discovery modules. Along the way, we've picked out some of the features that Ian was describing there that are new to this particular version of ePADD as well. So if we go ahead and play the video, fingers crossed.
I think maybe the sound isn't coming through. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, I was just about to ask that question to everyone if they could actually hear it. So,
sorry, when we tested it earlier, it was.
Yes, I thought it was working earlier on. If there is a problem, I can share it from my own laptop if that's easier.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Paul, if you can?
Yeah.
I don't have there's an audio setting here. It's not quite right somehow.
Okay.
So let me stop sharing and make sure you are a co-host. And hopefully you can now start things up and share from your screen.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Apologies, everyone. If you can just bear with me a moment, I'll see if I could share it with the sound. It won't be a moment.
You would think after 3 years of doing this with Zoom, we would have this down pat, but apologize for the small delay.
To install the latest release of ePADD, version 10.0 alpha, you will need to download the latest ePADD distribution file from GitHub. We can provide a link to the relevant web page. The file is found under the heading Assets. For those using Windows, only the exe file is needed. Those using Macs will need the DMG file. The appraisal module is the default module in ePADD. It is one of 4 modules: appraisal, processing, discovery, and delivery. The module allows users to review email archives on a local server prior to their transfer to an archival repository. When first launched, you will find yourself on the import screen. This interface is where you enter information about the owner of the email account, so for example name and an associated email address, and specify the location and account information of the files or IMAP email accounts that ePADD will be ingesting. One of the most significant pieces of work undertaken by the ePADD Plus project's development team has been the integration of ePADD with emailchemy, an email conversion tool. This provides users with the ability to import many more file formats than was possible in previous versions of ePADD, as well as the ability to export emails in formats other than Mbox, which is ePADD's standard format. For example, users can export to EML if that is a preferred preservation format. Although ePADD is free, to use the integrated version of emailchemy, users must purchase a license from the developers WeirdKids software and create a license dongle which will enable those features in ePADD. The license dongle is simply the license key installed on a USB stick. This dongle needs to be inserted into the computer each time emailchemy is used. The status of the emailchemy license, whether it has been enabled or not, is noted on the import screen. Here you can see that the license is active. If we remove the license dongle, however, it then becomes inactive. When the emailchemy license is active, users can point either to a specific non-Mbox file or to a folder containing one file or several. ePADD produces a list of folders contained within those non-Mbox files. In this particular instance, it is a PST file. We can select the folders we would like to import, and they are then available to us in ePADD's appraisal module. After the import, the data is stored in the ePADD appraisal folders located in the user directory. ePADD creates what is known as a canonical acquisitioned file. Canonical acquisitioned in this context refers to the unmodified form of email as originally received by ePADD and not yet subject to any conversion, appraisal or processing. ePADD stores the original unconverted PST file as well as any untouched Mbox files. Mbox files generated by emailchemy are stored in the folder appraisal normalized acquisitioned. Another new feature in this version of ePADD is the ability to import what we call sidecar files. A sidecar file is a file that is not necessarily part of an email archive, but which contains information that is relevant to it, such as a donor agreement, finding aid, or metadata file. ePADD allows users to import, export, list, and delete sidecar files. ePADD uses SHA-256 and MD5 checksums. The use of the SHA-256 is new to this version of ePADD. If an email archive was imported using an earlier version, it will not have been subject to this particular checksum, but ePADD now has a new feature that enables users to update checksums. Both SHA-256 and MD5 checksums are stored in the ePADD appraisal directory. One of the new features developed for the ePADD Plus project is the ability to capture a richer set of metadata, both automatically and manually. Here we have examples of metadata that can be added manually. Clicking the information button on the main browse page opens a window with information about the collection. Clicking the metadata button brings you to the page for adding or editing metadata. On the tabs here we can switch between collection, EAD and premise. The collection metadata in this particular tab was already a feature in earlier versions of ePADD. You can add some basic information about the collection, title, short description, scope and content. We can do the same for EAD. And also for premise. Here imported PST files and Mbox files are listed together. We can add or amend premise metadata for an individual file. And the premise metadata is available in both XML and JSON formats. The premise XML and JSON files contain manually added premise metadata, as well as some metadata automatically added by ePADD, such as date and time of ingest or the number of attachments in a collection. In this latest version of ePADD, users can add a premise event manually by selecting a premise event type from a drop-down list. You can add further information to the free text details field and enter the date and time of the event. This event is recorded in the premise XML file. Next to the integration of ePADD and emailchemy It is now possible for users to export an email archive to EML rather than Mbox, if that is the preferred preservation format. Exporting appraised emails in this way creates a file directory, which replicates the folder structure and contains the EML files. ePADD allows users to export either single emails or batches of emails, and it will include any labels or annotations attached to the emails. The processing module provides archivists with the means to arrange and describe email archives on a local server. To move to the processing module, the appraised email archive has to be exported. On the main screen, we select Export, select Browse under Export to Next ePADD module, and select the location where ePADD is to export the email archive. If we look at the file directory, we can see that the emails have been exported to the designated folder, along with all of the related information. To open up the processing module, we need to restart ePADD and click on the relevant collection. If we want, we can check and amend the collection or premise metadata. To enter the processing module itself, we simply click Enter. From the processing module, we can export the emails to ePADD's discovery and delivery module. The discovery module provides the tools for archives and libraries to remotely share a redacted view of email archives with users through a public web server. The delivery module enables them to provide moderated full-text access to unrestricted email archives within a reading room environment on a local server. Again, we follow the process we used for transferring emails from the appraisal module to the processing module. Starting in the discovery and delivery modules is very similar to how we started the processing module. We click on the relevant collection of module. In this example, we've selected the discovery module. The dashboard has fewer options as it's designed for access only. As I mentioned earlier, the discovery module is designed to run under a web server and allow remote users to search redacted header info and extracted entities while limiting full text access to the materials.
Thank you, Paul. That was very informative. So let me switch back here to the slide deck.
I'll just say thank you to you for your patience while we got the video started.
This interface is where you enter.
Okay. Okay. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to our Manchester colleagues, Tom and Jochen, who will be talking about testing and using the new ePADD product.
Hi everyone, so I'm Tom Higgins and I'm a software developer at the University of Manchester. So I think Jochen's going to talk a little bit about how to install ePADD and what version of Java you need, and then I'm going to tell you a bit about reporting issues on GitHub. So Jochen, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, there should be a video, yeah, on the right top. You have to do full screen, I guess. Yeah, so if you want to download ePADD, you go to the release page, and there are the different versions for Windows, for Mac, and you have the ePADD standalone.jar, which you can use for any system, including Linux. So you download the exe on Windows and you open it. And unfortunately, you have this message saying it's unorganized app, and you have to click on info and then run anyway. So we hope we will remove that for the final release. And so you need Java, at least version 11. So if you don't have it installed, you get a message, and if you click OK, it brings you to the download page for Java 19. And for Windows, it's just like a zip file with an installer. You just double click and it opens. And so hopefully for the final release, we will be able to bundle the Java together with executable. And then users don't have to worry about their own installations of Java. So after you started ePADD, you have 2 directories in your directory, which is ePADD settings, and that contains all kinds of things, and 4 log files, which is what we are normally interested in when people report any issues. It contains the logged information. So you can close the browser, and you will hopefully have a little icon in your system tray, and you can say open ePADD, and it opens. And you can quit. So the browser will stay the same because that's like a static page. If you refresh, you see it's not running anymore. Let's stop ePADD. And the other way to stop ePADD is pointing to 9100. That stops it there, but you can use a try icon. And then the icon goes, and if you want to restart ePADD, you have to use the executable again. And yeah, for the email Chemi license, you have to go to the there's a special website for ePADD and email Chemi, and there you can download the dongle creator, and you can buy the license. It's very straightforward. Just download the dongle creator. You start it. You enter your license number, and you put a dongle into your, like USB thumbstick into your computer, and you say create a dongle, and it will do it. And then you have your dongle, and you can go ahead and then go on any machine and with the dongle in, you can convert using email Chemi. And yeah, that's for me then.
Thanks very much. So hopefully we can get back to the slides. Right, okay. So on the next slide, I've got some notes about GitHub issues. Thank you very much. Okay, so if you encounter any problems with ePADD, or if you have some ideas about how we can improve the software, you can add an issue on the GitHub page. So you can choose whether your issue is an enhancement to the software or whether it's a bug that you found. You can also label your issue with the ePADD version. So for example, version 10, which is the latest release that we're delivering today. So if you do encounter a bug, to help us track down the issues, please indicate which platform you're using. So are you on Mac or Windows, or are you on Linux? And which version of Java you're using. You can also include some details about what you're doing. So were you importing emails, or were you exporting a preservation package? And in particular, if you're using the new email Chemi integration, what format of emails were you importing? Because those could be interesting details for tracking down the issues. Also, as Jochen showed in his video, ePADD will produce log files, so you can attach those to GitHub issues, and that will also help us to diagnose any problems. Right, so I think next, Trisha is going to tell you some more about how to get involved with the community.
Hello, thank you. I'm going to be sharing my screen as well. And apologies, I'm going to keep my camera off even though I'm sharing my screen because my internet connection has been awfully unreliable. So if I drop, you'll know why. And I'm just going to quickly pop in the chat for some more information on reporting bugs and enhancements. Thank you, Tom, on the new website here. So, oh, thank you. Stephen, do you mind if I share my screen real quick?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. So as part of the end of our project, we're launching a couple of new and different ways or just fresh ways to get involved with the ePADD user community and be a part of the work yourself, be a part of, you know, leading the future advancement of the ePADD tool and as well as code contribution as well. And then also just ways to share your own workflows and any projects you happen to be doing and any resources you think would be helpful to other users as well, because we want to make a really great kind of you know, resource compendium here. So as part of this, we're launching a fresh website. It's got all the information of the previous Stanford hosted ePADD website that you may have enjoyed. We've pulled it all over to this. We're actually, by the time we send out this recording and all the new release information in an email, we're hoping to have a more official domain. For now, it's just a Google Sites domain. So I will post this in the chat, but you'll be getting a fresh domain once we circulate it afterwards. So this website, you can see all about the history and all the different projects. Development, you know, grant funded projects that we've had. You can see meetings and events like today's meeting and some upcoming meetings that I'll talk about in a second. The download and install instructions, user guide, the shared discovery module, if you've ever checked it out, and how to put your own collections up on it. The issues and enhancements link that I just shared with instructions that Tom and Jochen pulled together. More information about the email to me for ePADD license, and we'll keep fielding some questions in the chat there as well. And then really importantly, right here under resources and community, we have put up some projects like the really cool 92Y email archiving project that's going on right now, also funded by the EABCC project. And we want to hear about other projects that are going on. Like you'll notice at the top of each of these pages, it's, hey, do you have something you want to share? Please share it with us. Send us this and let's get it up here. So projects, workflows that would be helpful to share, any videos and demonstrations that you have. You have the usual lexicon libraries here too. And if you have other lexicon libraries or regular expressions you'd want to share. And then we are also kicking off 2 new groups that we are hoping will lower the barrier to involvement, like direct involvement in ePADD, because, you know, until now it's been, Stanford has been kind of the fearless leaders for ePADD. And part of the ePADD Plus project, we were really grateful that we were able to form, you know, between Manchester and Harvard and Stanford, a great alliance in advancing the tool. And we want to encourage everybody else to start taking up grants, taking up, you know, ways to institutionally support it, getting on board with brainstorming how to organizationally and, you know, financially sustain it into the future. So the first group that we are spinning up is a quarterly steering group. It's going to be completely open. We will be sending out the Zoom invites through the ePADD user listserv, and we'll put that link in the chat if you haven't joined it before, but it will also be through the calendar here. You'll be able to find them. So for instance, There you go. And the steering group is for anybody that wants to build and advance the ePADD roadmap, strategize on resourcing and maintaining this open source project, improve documentation, user guidance, and other resources like that. So this group will start meeting quarterly in March of this year, and we will, once we get started, keep a really open meeting and agenda, and just anybody that's interested in making these things better, please join. We greatly welcome you. The other group that's going to be starting up is the ePADD code group. And this group is going to be meeting monthly just to make sure, it doesn't mean that you have to join every month. You could join more on a quarterly basis, but this group is going to be for folks that want to prioritize issues and enhancements and get started on actually contributing code. We were fortunate that the ePADD Plus project expanded the team that contributed to this project, mostly through the wonderful University of Manchester development team, and that Amuse Labs continued to consult throughout this project to ensure code continuity and sustainability, and we want to continue that trend. So right now, when people report bugs and enhancements, the current solution is to resolve those, either from the user institutions themselves that are reporting it, or they can be prioritized as part of grant or institutionally funded rounds of development later. As an open source tool, there aren't currently committed ongoing resources for ePADD, and we really want to shift the perception to, if you report it, could you either help fix it or strategize with the group on how to resource that? So this group will be meeting monthly beginning in March. And again, if you're on the ePADD users list, we will be sending out the information through that, and it will also be in the calendar if you want to join. And both being new, along with this website, we expect to learn together along the way about how they can improve and be maximally effective and useful. So it won't be perfect right out the door, and we are counting on all of y'all to work with us and make it wonderful. So I will stop sharing and turn it back over to Stephen.
Thanks, Tricia. Let me get back to the slide deck here. And okay, so at this point, we're going to take a little bit of a pause in the presentation, and we're going to stop talking at you, and we want to switch over to listening to you. So it looks like we've got a good chunk of time, about 15 minutes allocated in the schedule to listen to any comments, suggestions, and to take questions, and we'll try to answer the best we can. So certainly feel free to unmute yourself and take the mic to pose a question. And I will also start scanning through this chat to see, I know there are some things that I hadn't had a chance to look at quite yet. I will note right off the bat that there was a number of congratulatory comments for which we are all very, very gratified. Someone was crying out with joy, which is a wonderful thing to hear with regard to some of the new additions, and it's just nice to hear that all the hard work over the past year that we've done is very much appreciated. Let's see. So there was a question about Java version. Basically, you can use anything from Java 11 through 19, which is the current version. So I think Tom addressed that in the chat. There was couple of questions about the use of eMalchemy and eMalchemy licensing. And again, Tricia provided a link to the page on the new website that goes into a lot of information there. Basically, when you go to WeirKid software download site, there is now an option for a new email-specific license. I believe the initial cost is $150 for the first year, and then you can subsequently renew for a $99 cost in the out years. Anything else you'd like to add regarding licensing? Just not. Abby had posted a question about whether existing custom ePADD properties from older installations would continue to work with the new current release. And Jochen is saying that yes, that should work. Basically, what we've done is we've used the existing ePADD platform as the basis for all of our work, and then we added put some additions, some new functionality into it, but basically all of the existing code and existing supported functions should continue to work as they did. Kieran has a question about a development roadmap and how we'll be continuing on past version 10. That is something that we'll be getting to once the QA period ends. I think Sally DeBush from Stanford will be leading a presentation and potentially discussion about what we're doing there. Ren is asking about retention policies. So I think that is talking about some specific archival practices. And since I'm a librarian, I'm going to defer to some of my archivist colleagues who can talk about this. So I don't know, maybe Tricia, Sally, or anyone else who might like to address Ren's question about retention policy.
From what oh, sorry, Sally, were you about to jump in?
Oh, sure. I was just going to say that there is no functionality that's specifically geared towards supporting, implementing retention policies. It's really something that you would just do sort of on a manual basis or at your institution to set up retention policies, but it's not necessarily something that ePADD is geared towards.
But as Tricia was just talking about, one of the things that we'd like to sustain after this project is the development of a very engaged user community. And this strikes me that this is the kind of interesting question that should be discussed, and maybe various policy decisions can be shared. And I think we could certainly find a place on the new website in order to sort of host these things so that people can get a sense of what other peer institutions might be doing with regard to these types of policy questions. So thank you for asking that, Ren. Question from Mike about this new notion of what we're calling sidecar files. And I see Tricia answered in the chat, but just to quickly summarize, basically a sidecar file is anything that is not email. The initial use case that we had in mind for this were to have a way to add and incorporate things such as donor agreements, license agreements, various types of IPR related information, but it could also include sort of externally existing collection description, other types of information that you would like to bundle together with the actual email files themselves in the preservation package that might be brought into a preservation repository. But in essence, sidecar file can really be anything. Any non-email file can be brought in as a sidecar. It is internal to ePADD. The sidecar files are considered to be fully opaque. We do not do anything with them other than to retain them and make them available for inclusion in the download package, or in the export package rather. So hopefully, Mike, that clarifies things. Carl is asking a question, a technical question on distribution, and about whether or not there are going to be containerized, a containerized distribution, particularly a Docker image. So maybe I could ask someone from Stanford to respond to that. So I don't know, Tom or Jochen, could you sort of weigh in on that?
Yeah, so I think Ian's mentioned in the chat, it's something we could consider for the future, but at the moment we don't have a Dockerized version available. But yeah, certainly something we could consider.
Okay, great. On a very, very informal and anecdotal basis, maybe could we ask for a show of hands from folks that are here on the call? Maybe you could use the raise hand feature to, you know, if having a Dockerized container would be something that you would appreciate having, either alongside or in addition to the sort of, you know, jar-based distributions. Okay, I'm seeing lots of hands going up. While we'll be counting you. So let me go on here. Kieran again has a clarification on his question about future development directions, and again, I think that's something we'll be getting to in the next final session of this presentation. Okay, Melissa is asking a very important question that I think is probably many will be of interest to many, if not everyone here, regarding the eMalchemy license. And she writes, will one license be valid for a single institution? Or will each small repository within an institution need to purchase its own license and create its own dongle? My colleagues will correct me if I misstate anything. My understanding is things have, because ePADD, you know, is a desktop application, and the eMalchemy function is tied to you know, the USB dongle that has to be available you know, on that particular machine, that strictly speaking, you only need as many eMalchemy licenses within an institution as you want to have simultaneous uses of ePADD. So, you know, you could have 10 ePADD deployments on various people's desktops. If you wanted to share a single dongle, and that would mean that only one person could use ePADD to do the email translation. You know, if you don't want to use the translation feature, then you don't need the dongle, you don't need a license at all. But you could, in fact, share a dongle amongst multiple local deployments. That might be a little bit clunky. We did work with Matt at WeirdKid. He is very eager to support this project and this work, and he did actually come up with this new license pricing point specifically for ePADD. If you're familiar with ePADD, eMalchemy in the past, it's significantly lower than the site license and the forensic license that were typically what you had to do if you wanted to have a site-wide installation. So hopefully I said everything correctly from the technical point of view, and hopefully that clarifies things. If not, please let us know. Well, let's see, where are we on the clock? Okay, we've just got a few more minutes, so let me just scan through the chat and see what's available. Linda is asking about preservation formats. Right now, at the email level, ePADD continues to export in Mbox, which is its sort of canonical internal form. If you enable the use of eMalchemy, we now have the ability to export email back out in EML as well. The export package itself is a bag-at-bag, which is now becoming a fairly common structuring package within the preservation and the larger repository and even digital library world. So yes, Tricia makes an important point. While we're using eMalchemy to export only a single additional format, EML, we have a very broad roster of email formats that we can read for purposes of acquisition. And there is a list there at the on the website that Tricia has just popped into the chat. So let me go back. See anything else? Brent is asking about machine learning for purposes of pre-processing. Oh yes, so the sidecar, yeah, absolutely. Sidecar could be the sidecar mechanism could be a way of pulling in important pre-acquisition processing of email. And then maybe lastly, and then we'll move on, Paul, my colleague here at Harvard, is asking about, did I hear that one expected use case for the export feature is making files available in reading room contexts? Yeah, I think that certainly is something that has always been done and will continue to be done now, although now it can be done on using EML rather than MBOX. I don't know if anyone would like to talk about, perhaps really quickly, experiences that they may have had in actually using ePADD export or planning to use it for a reading room.
Yeah, and I think I answered that in the chat as well. Sorry, I just hitting on everything here, but the delivery module is a great option, existing option for a reading room access to those. And I think we have a couple of folks with raised hands as well.
Okay, I'm not seeing the full, I only have a single screen, so maybe Tricia, if you want to call on people with raised hands.
Absolutely. Nathan. Do you want to, I see your hand raised, Nathan Girth. Oh, or perhaps not anymore. Julie?
Yes, I'm sorry, I got distracted. I don't know the question.
Oh, no, not Julie Wetherell. Sorry, I'm talking the Julie with their hand here. I don't see
never mind.
Apologies.
Sorry, I'm here. Could you repeat that for me?
I just saw your hand raised. Do you have any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it was when we were raising our hands for the Docker box and I didn't lower
great.
it.
Yeah,
my apologies.
I see that from Nathan as well. Tammy, do you have a question or did I? I still see your hand raised as well, but maybe that was just for the Dockerizing. Okay, maybe we can move on to the next portion.
Okay, great. So thank you for wonderful questions. I hope you've addressed them. Please keep popping things in the chat. We are monitoring it and we'll be grabbing a full copy of it before we sign off. And we'll be giving you some contact information later on for additional things. So I think now we'll be handing off to my colleague Sally DeBush at Stanford, who will be talking about our plans for building a community roadmap. Sally?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Stephen. I'm Sally DeBush. I'm a digital archivist at Stanford. There was a question earlier about whether we have a roadmap for development going forward. And the short answer is that no, right now we do not. So this is sort of what we're hoping to kick that off with and continue to build on going forward. So we're going to spend about 25 to 30 minutes collectively building a roadmap as a community for ePADD. We love to hear your ideas about what you would like to see in the future for the project and the software. And we've always been really driven by the input from our user community. So just looking at this slide, we wanted to briefly recap some of the other road mapping that we've done recently to give you a sense of some of the priorities that folks have identified. And in some cases, we've been able to accomplish. So back in 2020, we participated in the It Takes a Village in Practice project, and met with some of our most active users to identify their priorities. So the last one on this list that you can see here actually fed directly into the ePADD Plus project that we're now wrapping up. And the rest of these priorities are definitely still of interest, and hopefully on the docket in the future. Next slide, please. So then just this past year, we hosted a community road mapping session at iPres, and we received a lot of great input as well, which we were able to act on, including incorporating ways for users to share their workflows and use cases, as Trisha was showing you with the new website, and then embedding that email conversion tool, Emailchemy, into ePADD, which you saw. Okay, next slide, please. So with that, we'll move on to our actual discussion. So please head over to this link if you can. And Stephen, if you're managing the slides, if you wouldn't mind heading over to that link too, that'd be great. This is a link to a Jamboard that we'll be using to record some ideas about this in this road mapping. So we'll just give a second for folks to get over to that Jamboard. I see quite a few people have joined. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So on the screen here, you're seeing 5 questions that we're posing to you. And we're going to take a couple of minutes to vote for the top 3 questions. So if you see that red dot in the top corner, go ahead and just copy paste that dot into the corresponding area of the question that you would vote on. So if you've ever done, like sticker dot voting, this is kind of my attempt to make a virtual version of that. And then we'll take a minute to do that. And then we'll go ahead and discuss the top 3 vote getters. And we should have about 7 or 8 minutes for each question. And Trisha kindly agreed to be our timekeeper, so if she could go ahead and prompt us whenever we're getting up on the next section.
And we're doing 2 minutes, sorry.
Yeah, I think about 2 minutes to give people a chance to do this. I know it's always a little bit like,
oh yeah,
trying to work with a bunch of people in Jamboard.
Yeah, actually, I think Jamboard we learned this at iPres, and I forgot we didn't learn our lesson. It caps off at 100 people, and we have over 100 people. So once folks have voted, if you could kindly just exit out so other people can get in there real quick too. Sorry about that. Got to find a different free tool.
Yeah, and so the kind of overarching question we were hoping to get at with these questions is really, how can we move ePADD forward? How can we make the software and the project more sustainable? How can we grow this community? So that's just something to kind of have in the back of your mind as you're thinking about these questions. And as other people have said already, we're really hoping to take this feedback and use it as the seed for future work, which you are very much welcome to join us into. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about this too.
We've got about 40 seconds left to vote on questions. And again, just a reminder that once you voted, go ahead and just close out so other people can also vote as well. Sorry, y'all. All right, and I think we should wrap up voting.
Okay. Well, just eyeballing, I would say it looks like the second, third, and fourth questions seem to have the most thoughts. So I think those are probably good ones to move forward on. So let me go ahead, or Stephen, since you're controlling the board, could you go ahead and click over to that second question? What resources, guides, events, workshops, etc., would be useful in your work? So in the top sort of middle, there's that the arrows. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And this one, yes. Okay. So we're going to take about a minute to silently add thoughts to this board using the sticky notes function. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that you can create a sticky note. It's under that cursor icon. So please feel free to go ahead and add your thoughts to this screen.
And I've got the
about a
timer
minute
going.
to do that, and then we'll discuss.
Okay. I've got the timer going, and again, if it starts getting jammed out once you've left, put your idea in there, please do hop out so other people can. Sorry about the hop in and hop out. Okay. Oh yeah, let me drop that again. I'll keep posting it so it's easy for people to get in and out of there. Oh, Abby, there's a link directly to the, let's see. Let me find something quick and easy for you. We've got 30 seconds left. About 15 seconds. All right, and time.
Awesome. Thank you, Trisha. I was just starting to work on kind of grouping some of these points because I'm seeing a little bit of overlap here among some of the suggestions that people added. Just off the bat, I'm seeing it looks like there's a lot of interest around, I guess, resources on helping people get started, and also this idea of selling ePADD or selling the idea of working with email to either donors or to, maybe people within your own institution. So it's really interesting to see that there's some, coalescence on that area, and that's kind of a pain point for some people. And if people have other things that they want to kind of share, or add, or build on this, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and jump in too. Definitely feel free to do that too. And then in a lot of, or quite a few of these seem to be related to the idea of having better documentation, like case studies or workflows, recorded tutorials. So just enhancing that documentation to give a lot more detail on sort of the practical steps in processing email. It sounds like that would be really helpful to a lot of people too. And I would just put another plug for what Trisha mentioned, that we're really interested in collecting your use cases and your workflows too. So, and publishing them on the ePADD website for other people to be able to see too. So if that's something that you've been working on, or if you're processing a collection and it's possible for you to kind of go along and document it as you go, that would be we would be really interested in hearing from you to get that documentation posted so that it can be a resource for other institutions who are trying to get started. Yeah, I see a hand raised. Sharon McMeekin, go ahead.
Hey, I already dropped this in the chat earlier, but just to say, here at the DPC, we're right at the very beginning of developing a new online training course on email preservation. And one of the things that we've been contracted to do as part of that is to develop some kind of tool walkthroughs. And obviously ePADD is going to be on that list. So perhaps I can exchange some feedback from you guys as the experts for then sharing those tool demo walkthrough videos once they're done.
Yeah, thank you. That would be fantastic. That sounds really exciting.
Sally, do we want to move on to the next?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're ready to move on to the next one, the next question. So how could the ePADD code, the software, become more technically sustainable? So for you folks out there with knowledge of open source software projects, especially, yeah, we would love to hear your thoughts on this question.
And I've got the timer going.
Awesome. Thank you, Trisha. So yeah, feel free to drop in your thoughts for the next minute or so.
Seeing some good ones coming up. We've got about a minute left for some ideas. Thirty seconds. All right, 10 more seconds for all the fantastic ideas. These are some good ones. And we're at about time.
Okay, thanks, Trisha. Yeah, I'm seeing some great thoughts here, and I've kind of grouped some that seem to be related to, because there are a lot of people are expressing, you know, this idea of just growing the number of contributors to the code, which I think is so key. And I know it's something that we've talked about and dreamed about because, you know, a lot of the users of this software, you know, we're archivists, we don't necessarily have the technical you know, skills to actually make changes to the code, even though we might have ideas about new features or things that would be really helpful to us, right? So to be able to grow that community of code contributors is absolutely critical, I think, to being able to tackle all of those things that we want to do and need to do, just to do the maintenance of the code to keep it functioning going forward, right? Let's take a look at some of these other thoughts that we have too. A more automated build process, that's a great point. The ability to hire developers to add new features and add pull requests. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to put that over here with this group, sort of along the same lines. Containerize the application, right? And was that something we sort of touched on with the idea to create the Dockerized version? So it's great to see some more support for that idea. Regular user testing feedback. Absolutely. I think that's a great point. It's something that we have done, especially when we released, you know, big changes to the code or new versions that are dramatically different. We've tried to do user testing. We had a really great session of user testing as part of the ePADD Plus project, but to be able to do that, you know, on a more regular basis would be really helpful too. Provide training to increase the number of contributors among users. Yes, absolutely. I'm putting that over here. Have a way to keep track of and assign improvement and bug fix tasks. Yes, so we do use our GitHub issues page to track, you know, bugs that are reported from users or feature requests. And that's been primarily the way that we use to track this. But I think we could even use it more extensively than we have. And the use of online and free QA tools for static code analysis and test conversions. Okay, this is something I don't know too much about, but also I'll take your suggestion. Great. Anything else that folks want to add about this topic? But I'm getting a very strong theme that that broadening the base of code contributors is really important. And which, Trisha, thanks for sharing that link in the chat. That is exactly what the code group is geared towards doing. So if you are somebody who you know, has the skills to potentially work on this code at all, please do join in that group and learn more about what they're doing and contribute your skills if you have the time. That would be absolutely fantastic. So maybe we'll go ahead and move on to the last question then. Okay. How could the ePADD project be more sustainable? This was what we were thinking, you know, as an open source project, either organizationally, in terms of how we engage with our community, in financially even, how can we become a more sustainable project? So we'll go ahead and take a couple minutes to contribute ideas and then we'll discuss.
Got the timer going and I've re-entered the link in the chat for one last question here.
Awesome. Thank you, Trisha.
Got another minute. 15 seconds. Winding down on time. If anyone has a couple last ones queued up, feel free to pop them in there. But time is about done.
Okay, thanks, Trisha. Yeah, I'm seeing some really great ideas here. One idea, regular user forums to exchange experience and knowledge. I love that idea. And I think somebody mentioned that too on one of the previous questions, the idea of having user forums as a way for users to kind of support each other through sharing their own experiences and workflows and, you know, struggles even. So I really like that idea. And I think we have discussed actually hosting a virtual user forum and maybe doing that annually. I think maybe Trisha was going to talk about that at the end, or Stephen was. But I think that is something that we were exploring. So that's kind of right on the same wavelength that we were. Expand the user base that relies on tool for stewardship and exchanges resources. Absolutely, yes. We are always looking to expand the user base. And, you know, I think we work really hard to try to support new users who reach out to us with questions or looking for advice about how to get started. So if that's you, please do reach out to us because we're very happy to help people get up and running. Transparency and outreach, absolutely. Yeah, that's, you know, partly what this meeting is about, just being trying to really let the community know what we're doing, what we've been working on, what we hope to work on in the future. And doing that outreach is so important. Okay, this point here, if more grant funding is received by an institution, use it to improve ePADD rather than build a new email tool. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great to support, you know, obviously this tool already exists and a lot of institutions do use it, at least to some extent. So being able to kind of continue to invest in ePADD with grant funding would be really helpful. And as Trisha mentioned, I think all of the development work that's been done on ePADD to date, you know, for the entire 10 years or so has been entirely grant funded. So that's been very important to us. Okay, local advocacy for institutional commitment or resources to code contribute to steering groups and other activities. Yeah, absolutely. If you have other, you know, folks that you work with at your institution in your area that are, you know, trying to get started on working with email and working with ePADD, to be able to kind of unite with them and provide support to them and work together, I think is really, really helpful, those personal connections. And this last point, collect and publicize success stories. Absolutely, yeah. If you are working on a collection and you processed it, you've gotten a research request and you were able to provide access to an email collection, write a blog post, share your experience, however you may be able to get that out there. I think it's really helpful to raise the profile of processing email, you know, both among archival institutions and also with researchers, to help them be aware that email is, you know, a primary source of information that they can be asking for when they're doing their research. Okay, I think we are about at time. So thank you so much for taking the time to contribute your thoughts to that. It's definitely something that we hope to use, you know, rolling into our steering group. So please, if you are interested in any of these ideas, look out for that meeting invitation. Please join that group if you can. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally, for leading us through that. And thanks to all of you for your wonderful contributions and suggestions. It's really, really very helpful to us as we move forward. So at this point, it just remains for me to sort of close things down. We want you to please stay informed with what's happening. Bookmark the new website. well, you can bookmark it now. You may have to re-bookmark it if we go ahead and get a more project-specific domain name, but there'll be notification of that in all the usual channels. If you're not already on it, please join the ePADD listserv. There's information on how to do that on the website, and you can also follow us on Twitter. Please consider getting involved in a very active way. If you're interested in participating on either the steering or the code groups, we would really welcome that participation. And the ePADD user forum, I don't actually know a whole lot about that. I don't know, Tricia, do you want to just say one quick word about what's projected for that?
Yeah, it's an existing forum that people have used for a long time. It gets used to a more or lesser extent, but it would be great if folks utilized it more. So it's linked here in the chat, and it's also linked off the new website as well.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not in slide mode here, am I? Okay. Then with that, I would like to thank so much to all my fellow presenters. Here is our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us. If you're like me, I know there's going to be all sorts of questions that are going to percolate up as soon as you hit the leave button. We would love to hear from you, either directly or using some of the other channels that we were just talking about before. We'd also like to give a great thanks to all the other team members who participated on the project, who are not presenting here today, but nevertheless, their work was really foundational to get us to where we are. And then thankfully, once again, thanks to all of you who have stuck with us here over the past hour and a half. You were both active listeners and active participants through a couple of these exercises and the QA session. So it's really given us wonderful feedback. So with that, I think we will stop things here today. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope that you will have very good experiences moving forward with the use of the new ePADD that we're releasing to you. So thank you and goodbye.